See who joins. Welcome to the Level Set. You have Team Pershing here with you today. Going back 50 plus years. We started in the early 70s.
In a couple of weeks too.
Yeah, started in the early 70s over there on Ferguson off of Olive at a school called Pershing Elementary. Larry Fields. I'm Red at Hudson. We are still here. We started there and we're still here. Started on the bottom. And now we're here to talk about some very serious developments this week, historic in their implications and likely in their impact, Larry, long term. We talk about this all the time. What are we going to do for our children and their children with the time that we have left when we have a concerted effort to really undermine all the progress that was made during our parents' lives and our lives through fight and struggle, death, bloodshed, and everything else, politics. The Supreme Court rendered 3 opinions this week, each equally devastating and far-reaching. We'll go to them one at a time, and I'm glad that you completed law school, Larry, and you're a fine attorney right now because you're going to help us break some of these things down. But man, I'll just be damned with the shit that they pulled this week. Let's start with affirmative action. Clearly, one of the benchmarks of lasting progress that was made during the civil rights era that had a continuing impact on the prospects of Black people in this country for generations and benefited others, the Asian community, the Latino community, many others benefited from the sacrifice that created affirmative action in the first place for minority groups. Supreme Court just ruled in a majority opinion that based on cases brought by the University of North Carolina, and I forget the other place,
Harvard.
That's an unconstitutional race preference. And, you know, even though you've been systemically disenfranchised in every aspect of our societal fabric, from education to employment to housing to everything else for 200 plus years, and then another 100 years after that during the Reconstruction, where we violently held you away from the rights that you were ascribed legally, and then gave you a tiny window, 50 years during the Civil Rights era, where we semi-leveled the playing field, but even that was met with much resistance throughout. Now the Supreme Court decides that's enough. Larry, what were your initial impressions, and what are your thoughts in terms of the impact of that decision going forward? What we need to look at, and we'll circle back to talk a little bit about Clarence Thomas in particular, man, because I had some things on my mind with him, and I know you did too. Clarence Thomas.
I think we need to use a framework in evaluating everything in this country that looks at things from a holistic standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
One, these, we are under the impression that we are in an harmonious society. The things that we want as a community are radical and are against what those individuals that want to maintain the status quo are. And until we understand that our children are sitting in classrooms with, in these mixed classrooms with diametrically opposed goals, we're going to come up short. The power structure wants to remain the same. We want all CEOs, white male. We want all the admissions to the Ivy League schools, white. This is, we want all the, we want all our presidents that are in our White House, white. We want something totally different than that. So we need to understand that we're in a contentious position every single day. We forget that. We think that we're working with individuals that want to see the best for everyone. That is not the case. There's a reason why it's called race. It's called race because it's a race, and somebody wins a race. Why in the world would you call my ethnicity a race?
Right.
You call it a race because we're trying to, somebody's trying to win something. That's why. So, before we look at anything, we need to have that understanding as a framework. Now, the actual case that we're referring to is Students for Fair Admissions, Inc. versus the president of Fellows of Harvard College, which was brought and financed by a conservative, Edward Bloom, who has an organization that's going across the country to try and rid Black folks of any semblance of advancement. He's taking his personal money, raising money, of course, to make sure that America is great again. And America is great when Negroes serve white folks to them.
Right.
Make no bones about it. So
and be clear that that's the mentality of, people hear you say that, Larry, and some people will recoil back as if you've said something outrageous. No, man, no. You are on point. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I know some of these individuals, they exist. They are active, they are aggressive, and they have taken the initiative to do exactly what you just said they're trying to do. And they've been at it for, again, as you pointed out many times on the show, 50 years.
Well, Reddit,
it's not new. This is part of that 50-year plan, but now it's coming to its culminating point because they position people to execute what they've been after for the last half century.
That is what we're Reddit. You that 50 years. Let's talk about that 50 years. So in 400 years, you've done exactly that, exploited our labor, exploited our intellectual and physical capabilities. That's what you've done. You've exploited that as a society. And the entire white community has benefited from that. Even, Dr. Alexander sent us all an article stated the biggest benefactor of affirmative action is white folks because of the affirmative action that is taken based on the color of their skin. You affirm it because, they're used to, now keep in mind, Reddit, there used to be.
They had 200 plus, 300 plus years of affirmative action.
Yeah, right. I mean, keep in mind, there was a mandate that no Black man ever got a job until every a job-seeking white man had a job. That was an actual mandate, man. So this notion that we're going to carve out a few, forget a meritocracy, we're going to carve out a few positions for you to have your experiences credited as positives, to me is, okay. Yeah, it's the equivalent of taking a knife out of my back that 3 inches, but I still have 9 inches of the knife in my back. So, but I digress. But with respect to the case was brought by, and funded by Edward Bloom. The case was brought by Asian students. It always is just fascinating to me how they never attack legacies. The vast majority of college admissions to Harvard individuals, to Harvard's admittees go to legacies.
Particularly at those Ivy League
They
schools.
never attack legacies. And what I mean by legacies, I'm talking about children of the individuals whose parents or grandparents went to Harvard. They never attack, and then another large group or individuals whose parents are faculty at Harvard. They never attack those, that group.
Right.
They never attack. I mean, now in the Michigan case, started the domino. This was about the law school. Young lady brought a case against the University of Michigan because she was denied admissions, and she stated that her qualifications were better when you look at them, and they're raw tactile, were better than some of the Black students. Well, her qualifications were better than a number of white students as well. But they never attack that. They always attack Black students because we appear to be the least organized and the low-hanging fruit, and quite frankly, they hate us.
Right. And here, let me just make a quick point with that, Larry, because a lot of times, even our allies and even people within our own community, as we both acknowledge, even brothers that we know, will feed into the misrepresentation of what affirmative action was about, which was somehow it was an attempt to give underqualified blacks access that they wouldn't otherwise have. No, affirmative action was never about that, man. Affirmative action was about giving qualified blacks the opportunities that they otherwise would not have had because of the systemic racism that was in place, preventing them for centuries prior to affirmative action. They could not take advantage of their own abilities because of the blocked access that affirmative action opened up. So please, people, don't feed into. Language is very important, man.
And on top of that, let's not just look at Harvard. Our beloved Wash U that's buying up everything in sight in University City and Clayton that they can get their hands on. They only had 3 Black graduates in the first 90 years of their existence.
Wow.
3. And it was a short window of time, and all 3 of them were in the law school. So this is a systematic play that that we're up against constantly, and we fail to recognize that we're in a war. We fail to recognize we tend to believe that we have arrived. We have not. And so we look at this in a vacuum. Well, what's going to happen 10, 15, 20 years from now when we can't find a Black primary care physician? Every study you read now with respect to culture and healthcare states that individuals that are in non-white groups fare far better by having someone as a primary care physician that is culturally in their same group.
Right.
So I don't,
these things are going to definitely be impacted.
Man,
by
there's
no if and a but about it.
There's none.
The outcomes.
It's none. It's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. So, this is now, and I will say this with respect to this ruling, we need to take a hard look at affirmative action ourselves. What good have the graduates from these Ivy League schools done to our communities? How many of them have come back and done what they were supposed to do? Because if they would have, you supposedly have this superior knowledge, why weren't there things in play to prevent this? Or are you so caught up in assimilating that you go to these schools and you act like your white counterpart that's sitting next to you, and your goal becomes to be on Wall Street as well?
Right.
Where's the commitment from them? So how are we, we'll talk about this later, but why do we continue to produce these Clarence Thomases and Clarence Thomas lights?
Oh, we will circle back to Clarence Thomas.
Why, why do we, because we are producing individuals that do not have any sort of allegiance to the community. And it is coming back wholesale to harm us.
There's such a constellation of factors in how we got here, man. Going back to, Larry, you can remember during some of the election cycles, some of the shows we had where the discussion was about not having sworn allegiance to either party, but trying to make the best strategic decision in how I vote, which you need to vote, should be exercised. And you can remember back when people knew, oh, Trump, Clinton, what's the difference, blah. But Trump was telling you what he was going to do, man. He told you, I'm going to put the worst people on this court that I can find that's going to do the most damage to you. He got in office by hook and by crook, and he set about that business immediately. He was appointing 50 million judges a day, each one more whack and anti-black than the last.
And how much of that is?
And now look at what you got.
How much
and
is
nobody
that?
Can make the debate that, oh, it could have been the same now. No. There's elections have consequences, man, and sitting it out ain't it until we have a different system in place. We don't. Voting for the dude that you thought, I don't know what the hell you thought. He was an open criminal, lying bastard, ridiculous physical coward that dodged the draft 5 times, and told you, I'm going to do this when I get in here with these courts. And he's done it. And here we are, man.
Well, what about the representatives that we had that were predecessors that left that hole available?
Yeah.
How do you lose? I mean, there are 2 Trump appointees in the federal court in Southern District of Illinois in East St. Louis. How do you leave those 2 vacancies there? I just had a case in front of one of them. How do you do that?
I don't know.
I mean, there's not been accountability.
You fall asleep at the wheel is what you do.
And shout out to Ruth Bader Ginsburg for holding on to the last minute.
Right.
Yeah, and allowing that seat to go and give them super majority. So we have all these 6-3 opinions.
Hold on, and shout out to the Republicans for gangster slapping the Democrats at every turn when they prevent Barack Obama from appointing someone to the Supreme Court with 8 months left in his presidency, and then allow Donald Trump to appoint one of the more radical justices with 2 weeks left in his presidency. And the Democrats sit by and say, well, they're just not playing fair, but we're going to lead by example. Yeah, your example is kicking us right in our ass.
And you see how effective they are.
Bench and get in the game, man.
They're so effective. They did that so effectively. You don't even hear a word out of Mitch McConnell now. Mitch doesn't have to say anything. He's got other folks doing his bidding. In the Supreme Court, you know, he's locked up the Supreme Court. He's locked up the district courts. So, you know, that's fine. Now, okay, cool. That was your shot. What we gonna do?
Exactly.
What we gonna do?
Exactly right.
Okay, good. Now we're up to date. What are we gonna do?
Exactly right.
Now, and you've tied my hands from the standpoint. Now, we did get a decent ruling in the Supreme Court this week. They did find that when an individual has a religious exemption and seeks an accommodation, businesses have to show a hardship for not giving them accommodation. So where are the soft spots in this court until we can get numbers that are in our favor? So
right. That's another piece.
Yeah, and we don't have time for emotion now, Red.
Part of the answer to your question, what are we going to do? Well, we figuratively, but the people in position of power literally should do is expand the court. I don't know that the Democrats have that kind of thing in them, man.
I read it. I'm gonna tell you like Angel.
They don't show me that.
I'm gonna tell you like Angel Reese told her cousin that was drafted this week. Y'all ain't got enough dog in y'all.
Yeah, they
you can expand the court if you want to expand the court, and they're gonna find a way to lose power again. They don't have dog in it because once we elevate to the position politically, we want to assimilate and forget the war that we're in. And so we begin to capitulate and act like everything is okay. And it's not.
Trying to become good politicians instead of remaining.
They're not even good politicians. They're not even. Why in the world has there not been any additional amendments to the Civil Rights Act in over 50 years? None.
Right.
None. There hasn't been an expansion at all. We have ineffective individuals working for us, and we continue to allow this. And Cori Bush is an exception.
Yeah, I like Cori, man.
No, we've got some serious problems here that we are not dealing with strategically moving forward. So the issue is, what is going to be the game plan? So we're going to overload the HBCUs now, and yeah, we're not going to these.
Larry, somebody was talking about that. I'm glad you brought that up because a couple of things I wanted to circle back to. But in terms of education opportunities and the immediate impact of this ruling, people say, well, the solution is everybody needs to go to HBCU. Unfortunately, our HBCUs have been chronically underfunded by mandate and don't necessarily have the capacity to receive what could be a massive, potentially massive influx of new students based on lanes being closed to you now over here, and you trying to go where you probably should have and could have gone in the first place. They haven't been supported to the extent that they have the capacity currently to receive what could be an exponential shift in student population from PWI institutes to HBCU institutes, man.
It could be, but the vast majority of Black folks that are getting into these Ivy League schools have better credentials than their counterparts. So, I mean, if in fact you want to make this, if in fact you see the shift that you saw in California at Berkeley and so forth, when they eliminated all of those, I think a bunch of this is what these institutions wanted to do anyway. And the caveat, one of the things that this idiot placed in, here's Dr. Alexander, one of the caveats that's placed in the actual ruling is that, good morning, Doc.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Dr. Alexander.
Is that although race can't be a factor in admittance, you can place it in your essay.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can talk about that in your essay. But my point is, the vast majority of Black folks that apply to these schools have equal or superior credentials than the other individuals. Yeah. So the thing that prevents them from getting into these schools is that the other individuals that are applying have an affirmative action tool that they're able to, a countering affirmative action tool that they're able to call on. They're either a legacy, they're an athlete, they had a parent that taught at the institution, they had a parent that or a sponsor that has donated money to the schools. So I mean, if you see the numbers drop off, in my opinion, I'm telling you, and just based on the way things are fashioned, it's because that institution really wanted to do that.
Right. Let me circle back, and then we'll pull you in, Dr. Alexander. Larry, you said something earlier. I want to re-up it and re-emphasize it, man, because it's so critical to my thinking that people remember what it was that you pointed out, and that was that you have to view these things through a holistic lens. You have to look at it. It's not just this decision in isolation. It's everything that's happening, man. The attacks on CRT. We're going to erase your history. We're going to close off opportunity for you in real time. We're going to redefine reality such that we reinvent the structures and the strength of white supremacy, restore it to its full potency in front of you. If you're not paying attention to it all, you're going to miss something when we are in the midst of what you could describe as a war. Pay attention, everybody. Pay attention, man, to what's happening.
Reddit, I think if there's a theme that this society has with respect to us, it is their desire is to make sure that Black folks continue to be of service to white folks in this country. And I mean servitude. That's it. As long as you're serving their interests, you're fine. We're looking right now. We're in the NBA free agency period right now. They're paying them insane money to entertain them. Insane.
Yeah.
And Clarence Thomas is of the world. I mean, he's serving their interests, and he's been rewarded.
Let's talk about him, man.
I mean, and so
let's talk about him. Larry, open up a discussion about Clarence Thomas.
No. This is a clinical discussion that Dr. Alexander needs to talk about, and I want to find out.
And I'm gonna throw in some layperson observations behind that clinical observation, because I got some layperson.
Right? How in the world do you create an individual that's diametrically opposed to everything in their interest, in their community's interest? I mean, how do you do that? This is, he fancies himself as a Black male. He fancies himself as someone that wants to be viewed as equal. Yet and still, he has a white man paying his mama's rent. He has he's married outside of his race, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. If you can find love under a rock, and my mother's dictum, good for you. But she also
looked like she came from under a rock.
What'd you say?
I said she looked like she came from under a rock.
But my mother also told me if you color struck, you can find somebody in your race that's whiter than the whitest white person. But anyway, You know, the Enigma, there's a book called The Enigma of Clarence Thomas. I refuse to read it. But they say it helps you get some understanding of it.
No,
But
I don't even
I
want.
cannot understand. This is the equivalent of chickens campaigning for Colonel Sanders. I've never seen anything like it, man. So, Doc, please help us understand this guy.
Well, I mean, I think I don't think it requires, an overthought. I mean, this is what the constant barrage and the onslaught looks like. This is identified with your, identify with the aggressor, identify with the oppressor, right? Trauma bonding. That's what this is. Even more basic. You can't beat them, join them, right? That's what this is. Now, one of the things that Red referenced that you yourself mentioned before I got on is, I think the more odd thing is that in the context of this fight, he at least has acknowledged we are at war. Eden just chose to be a traitor.
Right.
Many of us, believe we are loyal to us.
Right.
But struggle with the cause. Like we about Black and whatever we perceive to be Black things, but we either don't understand our cause, or we're not necessarily loyal to the cause to the degree that we're not fighting the war. And we ain't conscientious objectors.
Right.
It ain't that. We clearly don't understand what this thing is. Red mentioned, the battle for CRT. Like, we engage in that conversation, but we don't even know what CRT is. We think CRT is Black. We think CRT and Black history are synonymous because that's what white people say.
Right.
No,
So
we are evidencing CRT right now this week in these rulings.
We don't understand the context in which we don't understand the context in which we need to move. We draw all of our cues, if we have any cues at all, from the enemy. And yet,
Doc, can I just say something right there? Because
good.
Yes, that piece. And Clarence Thomas for sure drew all of his cues from that. I can tell you, as a layperson, you may be able to confirm it with your professional opinion. Somewhere early on for him, man, he made an affirmative decision that he was going to only see himself through the white gaze. That's what people do. My litmus test of my value and my worth and who I am and how I'm proceeding and if I've made progress is going to be based on their opinion of me and how I should be and what I should do and what I think. Otherwise, how do you escape in your mind that you benefited from affirmative action? You got your ass in school from affirmative action. Every other piece of progress that you made, only to come now and say, "See, boss, ain't I a good fixer? See, boss, I'm a good, whatever you think you're supposed to be through that gaze." People don't ever make that mistake of allowing somebody else's gaze to define who you are and base your behaviors and choices on what you think white people expect or want you to do. We're all humans. Our humanity has the same value as everybody else's. Man, we do what we do based on our own humanity and decency, not because we need the approval or acceptance of anybody outside of ourselves, man. But Clarence, I feel like he bought that hook, line, and sinker, man.
I mean, if you look at this thing, and we certainly know he's not the only one, but we've all been, inundated with this American dream thing, right? So whatever whatever the taglines are, we believe it.
We have brought into it. We
And,
believe
yes, we've been indoctrinated.
That is
yes.
it. We've been, I mean,
Yes.
from the and we believe that we are successful because of our individual effort, and that individuals that are not successful are successful because their lack of individual success, when the whole system is corrupt, is set up for the indoctrination to produce fruit like Clarence Thomas has.
Yes.
And then the thing about it is, we can look at Clarence Thomas, but as I was explaining to Reddit, there are individuals that we've sent to Congress, Senate, and other areas that have almost a self-loathing and a deferential attitude towards the system, that are in frats, our frats and everything else, that are just as detrimental in their daily decisions as Clarence Thomas. When you have sayings in your hood, sayings in your that are common, like a Negro under your hood ain't no good. I got to go get one of them white boys to fix my car. You don't want to go to a black doctor. That same sort of self-loathing is killing us.
Right.
Yep. And again, it's not new. It has existed for as long as we've been here. It has existed. We struggle with it conceptually. So let's take W.B. Du Bois. So we go back to Souls of Black Folks. Here. There are many things, for which I question W.B. Du Bois. I actually think W.B. is in this space, but I think he was struggling internally in this space. Right. I think the notion of double consciousness, his notion of double consciousness, comes out of this space.
Mm-hmm.
At the time in which he walked the earth, definitely as a little person, despite his circumstance in which he says he realized that when he realized that he was Black, when he was in grade school and a little girl told him he was Black. Beyond that, trust and believe, many times he could have passed. And I don't really have no reason to believe that he didn't pass and just ain't right about it. But this double consciousness where you are one and you are this and that at the same time. We weren't even citizens so there was no double consciousness. When he was born, we were barely
Doc, define.
We barely fighting. We just beyond the 13th, 14th, and 15th. So what is this that he's attached to at a young age? Yes, sir.
Please define double consciousness, because it is a conversation that needs to be had. Now people would call it code switching almost, but please define it and pick up.
The struggle Negro faces to remain true to the Black culture while at the same time confronting the dominant white culture. But it can't, I don't understand the struggle. That culture eats us up, chews us up, and spits us out each and every day. Worse then than now. What possibly could have been the struggle Anytime between 1884 and 1963, what could have been the struggle? Except for he himself could pass, right? And so, and you know, but he's not the only one. So we fast forward about, turncoats, and
Clarence Thomas comes to mind.
Well, such Clarence Thomas comes to mind, but there's many. I mean,
yes, lots.
The brothers that J. Edgar Hoover hired. So the first FBI agents, black FBI agents, or whatever they called that thing before they called it the FBI, were black folks that Hoover hired to infiltrate Garvey's movement. What causes you to do that? What causes you to go and sabotage Denmark Vesey's plan? What causes you to go and sabotage Gabriel Prosser's plan? This exists. This exists.
Somebody should study it.
It is.
I mean, to get the answer do you have the answer to that question? What causes it, though?
It's the pressure. I mean, but it's not pressure to conform necessarily. It is the pressure of this thing, and people think by conforming it's going to work. And so, another thing, nobody, So we in error. We say all the time, we need to be together like we was back in the day. But there was no together back in the day. Because it wasn't just those four dudes who aligned themselves with the FBI. There were some other dudes who aligned themselves with the FBI against Garvey. One of them was Walter White, the secretary of the national secretary of the NAACP, who was he was boys with Hoover. Who's another one? The guy who succeeded him, the guy from Kansas City, I keep forgetting his name. It'll come back to me. Roy Wilkins. Roy Wilkins aligned himself with the FBI. Not just, I don't know if he was involved in the I don't know if he was involved in the Du Bois thing, but Wilkins was involved on the other side of history as it relates to Paul Robeson, right? He spent much of the time in which they are fighting this fight at the same time as an adversary to King. That's who he was, right? And who else? Back to where I started. W.B. Du Bois cooperated with the United States government to create the demise of Garvey's movement, right? So nobody talks about that. Nobody talks. So this thing exists. Whitney Young and Ralph Bunche both were adversaries of King's progressive move. Wouldn't say it publicly, but each disclosed it to him privately. Scared because they wanted what they had more than what the people need. And so that's the other piece that we also have to we also have to account for, is a part of this American dream is what? Materialism.
Come on.
And
now.
so we will sell, we will sell, we will sell out because there is material gain on the other side of what we perceive as thinking. And oftentimes, those guys are cutting the deal not because white folks necessarily accept them, but because they get whatever they perceive to be the spoils, the reward for doing so. And that's what we're looking at. Now, some of them for access, some of them because they think they're better than everybody else anyway. And, all of these things play an issue, right? So Larry spoke of those other things that exist outside of race that that can be used to account for the differential admissions. Well, we know that, white women have benefited the most from affirmative action, right? And probably after white women, white male disabled vets, right? Those are probably the people who benefit. White women, that ain't even a probably, that is. It's that disabled vet piece that I got to vet. I literally have to vet some more to make sure that part is true. But even when you look at that, okay, so let's just break down the mechanics of this. So if affirmative action is going to exist, why is it that white women benefit? Well, because even in the context of affirmative action, who's making the call? White men. And so, other than themselves, who do white women, 99.9% of the time benefit? White men. So so this whole thing is that, right? Now, so just like there are all of these other factors that impact this enrollment. You got the legacy standard, you got all these kind of things. So gender impacts it, legacy standard impacts it, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's this whole set of things that impacts the sellout. That motivates the reason that the sellout sells out. So some of it again is this constant onslaught. We ain't come from shit, we ain't got shit, so I'm gonna ride with them, right?
And think that's just purely
and fundamentally the fundamental self-hatred. Say that again, Red.
And think that's the smart play. I'm gonna ride with them.
Yes,
that's the smart play.
Yes, right? and because
you're not smart as me, otherwise you'd be riding with them.
Otherwise, you'd be riding with me, and so
and then you don't even know
there is no love
for
us. But again, they've bought purely into that thing because that is necessarily an individual decision, right? So wherever you see that is an individual decision that runs totally counter to our cultural ethos, which is cooperative and collective.
That's correct,
right? So wherever this thing is frayed, then that is because the person who engages in that has gone literally gone rogue, right? And so, but if you listen to some of our conversations, not just about this, but about anything, when people were arguing about Deion Sanders, people were saying, "Oh well, so he supposed to go get that money." How does that become what? Why is that the litmus, right? He's already a multi-millionaire. So, if you want to go. And so much of this conversation is not about him. It speaks to how we move and perceive and perceive achievement and accomplishment. And again, when we look at this situation,
and Doc, let me say this. Too often, accomplishment is associated with your adjacency to whiteness,
your proximity to white folks, and money.
And
right?
money.
And then sometimes it don't even be money, right? Sometimes it can just be white folks.
Doc, let me say this too. The vast majority, as we can see in the individuals here in St. Louis that are in jail now, they don't even know what that we're in politics. You don't even know what to ask for. You're so dumb and uneducated. You don't even know what to ask for. You don't even know what to sell out. You don't even know the value of your loyalty
of this mistake that you about to make. Like, how you losing seats and going to jail for $5,000, for $1,500? Like, if you're gonna make this train wreck occur, if you're gonna literally steer this train off the track, why we ain't talking about generational wealth? Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, why we ain't talking about something that's gonna benefit somebody down the line? That stuff is ridiculous. And so, but that's not how we think, because You know, I mean, and again, like the worst thing, like with these politicians that do it, they're playing with the people's money.
Right.
We ain't got that money. We ain't got that much money to play around with.
We do not.
Right. So
And
we playing with slim margins, and then the little money we got, these guys trick off on some foolishness for them. They're not even cutting deals that benefit the people. Now I can see you like, okay, we gotta go in this back room, have this conversation. Okay, so look, you do this. I mean, it's kind of like what Mike Jones talk about all the time. Like, how the fuck they build a stadium downtown? You know, a soccer stadium, right? You know, if you're gonna cut some deals, it got to be some deals about that stadium. So if y'all get the stadium, we get this. But that's not what they do. Oh, y'all want the stadium? I'm gonna need some tickets. That's what we do, right? joke, and it don't be like I need tickets to make sure that every public school kid goes to X number of home games. That joke will literally be meaning, well, I'm gonna need two. I'm gonna need 2 tickets, right? And, you know, and so this is the thing that we up against, but we see this thing over and over and over again, but we don't necessarily know what we're looking at, you know, because we ain't engaged at that level. Yay, we got the first Black woman as VP. Yay! Oh, we got a sister on the Supreme Court. Yay! Meanwhile, we can't vote. Now we can't go to school, and we can't get no jobs. Yay! This what we signed on for. Thought we was winning. We don't know the game.
Right. It's that holistic context. It's looking at everything with the widest lens possible and taking it all in at the same time, not looking at a piece here, a modest victory over here. You have to understand history, first of all.
You understand history. Right. And so
what's still underway and being executed in the present day is just a continuation of the original plan.
So we got to understand the playing field
and put the same original thought people back in places to make decisions. Same.
Yeah, and narrow our stimulus field. And so that, to your point, you know, we looking at this whole thing and not looking at the more intricate details. So yes, we have to, particularly in this. So the other part of this is, you know, all 3 of us, we've been in conversations, folks be like, well, I ain't political. Everything you do is political.
Right.
Everything you do is political, and everything you do is business.
Right.
Everything you do and don't do.
That was the next thing I was getting ready to say. Everything you don't do is political too. Right.
And so it's all political. Every time you spend some money, that is political.
The most political
that's what makes
it today will be to eat.
Yes, and you know
that's the most political thing you will do, and you do that every day. There's
you
more
do that every day
behind what you eat than anything in this world. And so
every time you eat, you should be running a calculus in your head. Where does that dollar go once it leaves my hand?
And what political authority allowed it to get in the flow of commerce to get to your hand? And based on that, you should know whether or not you should eat that.
So I give you
which corporations bankroll the Supreme Court and which ones don't, and get favorable decisions and which ones don't, and which ones support the end of affirmative action and which ones don't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so again, so we look at that corporate piece. Okay, so here's the other narrative that we don't pay attention to, and part of the reason that we don't pay attention to it is because we don't understand it. The part of it that we do pay attention to is from his, meaning the enemy's perspective. All those folks huddled at the border. All right, so we have our various conversations and positions on that. But while we're talking in circles about, you know, what happens with what happens to the people at the border and why they even there, the rates of childhood labor in the United States are skyrocketing as we speak. So who is that? Right? That's them people huddling at the border, right? The rates of uh, exploitation of women in the workplace skyrocketing. Who is it? It's them people at the border. So part of this, we can't stop the flow of immigration at the border. Is those people are working literally for free. So why do we need an affirmative action where we have a population? This is the enemy. This ain't me. This is the enemy. Why do we need affirmative action? This them corporations that you're talking about, Red, that are influencing the high courts, and then every court in between, the municipal court and the high court. Why do we need affirmative action when we have an exploitable workforce coming in? When they come in, we separate the kids from the parents, and we have access to those kids, and they came here for a better life. What better way to have a better life than to work for us for 5 cents a day? Yeah. These numbers are skyrocketing. Ain't nobody having that conversation. We mad that they're here, like they competing with us for jobs. They ain't competing with me. Right. I don't think they competing with anybody that we actually know. Now, certainly there are some folks not that there are Black folks that, I'm not saying that there aren't Black folks who are willing to work in some of these jobs. Yes, there are. And I know that there are folks in, who work in textiles and work in agribusiness and things of that. And I know that exists. And yes, their jobs are at risk. But because we don't look at this thing for what it is, we can't carve out what's necessary to fight in their interests, because that's not the space in which we have this fight. First of all, we don't even fight the fight. We just complain that they coming. So we don't know that we don't know where they're impacting us for jobs. We just say that they're impacting us for jobs. And the only reason we say that they're impacting us for jobs is because white people say, give crazy messages. Otherwise, we would know that we would know the industries where this is impacting. We think it's impacting us from doing lawn care. It's not keeping us from doing lawn care. You want to have a lawn care business? Go get you a tractor. Go get you a pickup truck. Get a blade on the front of it so you can move snow in the wintertime. You can have a lawn care business. It ain't the Latino folks that's keeping you from that. It's this larger thing. Whatever is not working here is a function of the larger system. It's a function of what the white man does or does not want. That is just basic. But what will we do? When we look at Black folks who don't have, we say what? They don't want nothing. They want it better, they would get it. That's what we do. We too blame the victim. Why? Because that's what the white folks do.
That's what the system does.
Yes.
If in fact you ever attack the system that's oppressing everyone, status quo may be in jeopardy. We don't want that. Like you say, it goes all the way back to your boy Calhoun, where he would allow you to separate based on race. Then based on race, I can get it based on individualism. Based on individualism, I can break up communities and I can keep everybody fighting and stay in control.
Yes. And this is what we up against. It's been the same fight. Fights never change. There are things that we could be doing to fix these things. Like, so last week we were having a conversation that we typically have every so many, shows or whatever. Like, there's very little that occurred really ever, but more specifically between that 1950, let's say 1954 to 1968, that period of time that we call
civil rights movement.
The civil rights movement. there's very little that occurred that's not instructive, but we don't use it. And that's our fault. And that's when we'll circle back around and we'll get distracted about what CRT means, and as opposed to just studying the history ourselves. And so like, and the interesting thing about the conversation and our own confusion about CRT is that, what's the brother's name, Larry?
Derek Bell.
Derek Bell, who didn't coin the phrase, by the way.
Coined by one of his students.
Kimberly Crenshaw.
Yeah,
coined the phrase. But one of those major tenets, and this is a Derek Bell piece, is interest convergence.
Yes.
And so interest convergence means that, when we look at whatever gains or strides occurred in that period of time, in particular, from 54 to 68, when we look at that period of time, we're at the height, internationally, we're at the height of what? We're at the height of the Cold War, right? So those folks who are dealing in international politics on behalf of the United States are coming back, giving feedback to the presidents. And they like, and the Congress, like, we are getting killed overseas, talking about we're spreading democracy. Meanwhile, we treating Black folks this way. So interest convergence means that our fight for rights and freedoms coincided with the United States government sale, international sale of this diplomacy and fairness. And so the two things didn't jive. So they had to start strategically giving ground, not because we were necessarily effective, but because to do otherwise was undermining the look they were trying to have internationally. Right. Interest convergence. But we don't know that, right? We don't understand that.
And we do not expand it, because that should be expanded daily, because America's interest is based on the well-being of its citizens. And I mean, that's one area I think we need to, Doc, you hit that nail, on the sweet spot. Before we get out of here, there are two other cases that we'd like to talk about. Supreme Court didn't just have these three, but there are two other cases that we need to talk about and circle back to them. Biden versus Nebraska was a student loan forgiveness case, and which Supreme Court said, let them eat cake. Yeah, these need, they need to pay for their loans. And then the other one which was the most unusual case that I've seen. It just lets you know that this is a very aggressive and almost rogue Supreme Court. Creative LLC versus Elanus was the First Amendment case that was brought by a web designer that did not, this is essentially a advisory opinion. There was
a what if case. If this happened, this is what we'll do.
That's right. So I mean, there was really, I mean, this was not even a contested case. So I mean, it's really surprising that the Supreme Court, and unless you know how the Supreme Court is just a runaway Supreme Court. This is a aggressive judicious Supreme Court, and so in that case they found something that will possibly, it's going to result in a bunch of litigation from the standpoint, business owners have a First Amendment right in this specific case now not to serve a particular customer. Now, the way this opinion was written, it was written narrowly, stating that individuals that produce their own works do not have to endorse the theories and the mores of other individuals that conflict with their own First Amendment opinions. But rest assured there will be a chicken joint in Alabama that says that my First Amendment rights prohibit me from associating with Negroes, so I'm not serving Negroes.
You know it's
this
where
will
it's
be-
headed. You
and
know
that's
it's
fine.
going there.
Yeah, and that's fine, because I'm not spending my money where it's not where you
Right.
don't value me
Right.
anyway. You know,
Right.
so
we're gonna end up on the wrong. We're gonna end up on the wrong end of this decision, not because the decision occurred, but again because we don't study. So we don't go fight a goofy fight against some random restaurant because that random restaurant decides that it's not going to serve us, right? As opposed to going to eat and supporting the entities that do.
Right.
Well, I got a right to be. No, you don't.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Larry, you was probably still
I
here.
don't go anywhere. I'm not welcome. Not and almost celebrated.
Yes, Larry, you was probably still here when Dave and Buster's built that first Dave and Buster's downtown,
Right.
and they wasn't serving black folks.
Right.
And then they protest and all that. Why? What? They don't want you there. Why go?
Why?
We got a right to go. No, you don't.
No,
and
you
Red, this is like sometime between 92 and 96 that this is going on.
Wow.
And so it was Dave and Buster's. They built a restaurant downtown, downtown Chicago. Kind of like in the heart of like near north, if you know. And so that's just like little bit north of the little. It was kind of a little bit northwest of what we call the Magnificent Mile, Michigan Avenue, where all the big shopping occurs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so they built the store, and they wouldn't let black folks in, and so black folks protested to have access to the. Why? Go spend your money where they want you and where they hire you. Right now, so let's go back to the instructive piece. The whole reason why there was Operation Breadbasket in the movement, and it comes out of one of the pastors. His name skips me right now. In Philadelphia, created the thing having nothing to do with King and the SCLC, but he had a foundational program going on in Philly for the same reason, and then then SCLC took it and with the plan, collaborated with the plan to push this nationwide. But it was simply fundamentally, we're not going to buy where we can't work. Right? That was the thing.
Right.
that is the fundamental. Right. That is the fundamental piece of Operation Breadbasket. We're not going to buy where we can't work. And so we don't take these kinds of notions. When we do demonstrate, we demonstrate because we just want this random access. And so now this ruling hits right at the heart of that. It's a First Amendment right for a private owner to do whatever it is he or she wants to do. We're going to fight a bunch of random arguments as opposed to, supporting Black business and other Black friendly businesses.
And see, that's the whole piece to me, Doc. That, here we are, so you're being told you can't shop where you want to shop. You're being told that we're not going to forgive your student loans. You're being told that we're not going to let you in our schools. Why isn't this a time for us on one point to just build? Why are we not just building? So, if in fact we've got an audience at HBCUs, we can radically change the shapes of our entire communities. There's a North St. Louis that is beautiful and loved and underdeveloped in every major city. Mm-hmm. Why can't we as HBC? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. Because we can. And that needs to be the focus. We have everything we need. If you're gonna sit here and argue with these folks to have for them to pat you on your head, shame on you. but that's not what I'm doing. So, you know, we've got to change fundamentally, even in the same classroom. It's been, you know, Dr. Amos made it so clear. Even in the same classroom, sitting next to your Harvard classmate, your objectives are totally different. Their objective is to keep the system the way it is. Your objective is to radically change the system for the betterment of your community.
To be disruptive.
To be disruptive.
For the betterment of your community.
But see, here we are, so quick to want to assimilate into something that will exploit you and spit you out. Yeah, you'll retire at 40 or 50, but what about everything else? And everybody else. So I mean that's what needs to take shape.
Can I read
you can
read this out with a quote?
Please.
So Aimé Césaire was a writer and poet. It's from Martinique, which was a French colony, and so we talk about
Martinique women were horrible, weren't they?
Yes. And so we talk about Fanon, but Aimé Césaire was one of the folks who also influenced Fanon. But and is associated with the concept. He and some other scholars and writers are you know responsible for the concept of negritude. And so, you know, loosely for them, negritude would be you know, it would be some combination of if you were able to consolidate the Harlem Renaissance and the Black Power movement, you would have negritude. All right, so that just to kind of give us some context for negritude. But his birthday, I think, was on Tuesday. I want to share a quote because this quote is about white supremacy. It's not about any one country. This quote is about white supremacy. Because the reason that this is about white supremacy, because, you know, harkening back to our conversation last week, is that these brothers were Pan-Africans. A civilization that proves incapable of solving the problems it creates is a decadent civilization. A civilization that chooses to close its eyes to its most crucial problems is a stricken civilization. A civilization that uses its principles for trickery and deceit is a dying civilization.
That is it right there, brother.
That is that.
That is that.
This is the nature of the beast. And we in the belly.
Put that on a t-shirt.
We are in the belly of the beast.
But it's dying, and all those opinions that we talked about today are going to those are additional bricks that have been dislodged in the base of it. And so we need to be prepared to galvanize ourselves and reestablish ourselves when this whole framework falls, because it's falling. It's just, I mean, it's right in front of your eyes. It's falling. I give you 50 years over 400 years and take it away. Oh, it's falling. And then the thing that's most troubling is that, you know, there aren't any demonstrations around the country. There aren't any mass meetings for us to organize and say this, because this is a watershed moment for you, for those of you all that have been acting as if you've made it, and that you know, with this fallacy, for all of us to organize and to do what's necessary for the betterment of our communities. But there's nothing. It's just the status quo. Okay, cool. We're gonna be okay anyway. No, you're not. Not at this rate. Not at this rate. Not with the adjacency that you want.
And to that point, Larry, because there are things happening, and we need to plug in wherever. So here in Bronzeville, so Bronzeville is near Southbridge. So before I was talking about, you know, the near north. So Bronzeville is the near south. That's where, you know, that begins, you know, our Black metropolis, right? So the people of Bronzeville, as a ward, coalesced and voted to add a property tax measure to the ballot, right? So they got that passed a few years ago, and the property tax measure was they voted to add the measure, and the measure said that they would all agree to a property tax increase that would then be utilized to establish a mental health facility to service Bronzeville.
Wow.
So they got the ballot, they got the measure added to the ballot, and then they got it passed by 88%.
Excellent.
Right? This is what we need to be doing. These are the types of things that we need to be replicating, nationwide. First and foremost, we got to do it citywide because it's happening right here. So adjacent communities need to be, joining on to similar things and doing cooperative things when able. And then we take this model and we do it other places. And so I'm sure that there has to be other places that are doing this too. But this is an example of, of people coming together in our interests with our resources. This is a self-determined, to borrow from really everything about this project reflects Kwanzaa. There's unity, there's self-determination, there's cooperative work in economics, there's creativity, there's a faith in the people. It's all of it. Every aspect of Coadia exists in projects like this, where we look to self, we trust self, we define self, and we define and determine how we are going to utilize our resources on our behalf. And this is what these cases force us to confront, as opposed to fighting about what they're taking. We have to be looking at what we got and what we got to give to us.
That is just,
That's the note. That's the note right there. I'm going
sums it
to
up.
call us. I'm going to call us to a close on that note, Doc. I think it's exactly right. And I think it really becomes, in reality, our only option going forward. The only available successful approach that is available to us is what you described exactly. All other roads are going to be closed because all other roads depend on someone else's initiative.
Let me say this, Red, before we get out of here. Let me say something real quick.
Go ahead.
Along those lines, we have got to stop allowing other individuals to define us. One thing that Du Bois said, Doc, one thing that Du Bois said is that him going to Harvard was Harvard's pleasure, not his. And we think that Harvard makes us and these other institutions. It's not. We've got to do a better job of understanding. Let me tell you something. There's not a white politician, or not a white clinical therapist, a white expert on human rights that I would put above any of either of you all. And it's not because you're Black. It's because I know what you had to go through to get where you are. Maintaining your humanity and the level of excellence that you consistently display. So this notion that these other communities have the secret sauce is based on a construction that is a curation that we have got to some sort of way get rid of.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Dr. Charles Alexander, Larry Fields, I'm Reddit Hudson. Thank you, viewers and listeners, for sitting with us again. Come on back next week and let's talk.